All right, let's get right into it. Today we're doing a deep dive on some pretty fascinating military tech coming out of China. We're talking about the J-36 stealth fighter jet. And we've got this article from the Economic Times that really digs into what makes this thing tick. And let me tell you, it's a game changer. Potentially a huge shift in the balance of power, especially in the Indo-Pacific.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. This J-36, it really embodies China's whole approach to military tech right now. They're not just playing catch-up anymore. They're looking to leapfrog ahead of everybody else.
Yeah, and they're definitely making a statement with this design. I mean, have you seen this thing? Tailless, triangular, it looks like something straight out of a sci-fi movie.
That's all about stealth. Getting rid of the tail reduces the radar signature dramatically, makes it super hard for conventional radar systems to even pick it up.
So basically, they're building a ghost in the sky.
Pretty much.
That's wild. And then there's the engine situation. 3 engines. That's not your typical fighter jet setup.
No, most fighters have 2. But with 3 of these WS-10C turbofan engines, they've given the J-36 incredible power and range. Think high speed, high altitude, covering huge distances without needing to refuel. It's a massive strategic advantage.
Especially in a place like the Pacific Ocean where you've got all that space to cover.
Exactly.
And all that extra space from that larger airframe.
Yeah.
That's got to mean more room for fuel, weapons, all sorts of other goodies.
Absolutely. The J-36 is not just about stealth and speed. It's about carrying a serious payload as well.
And it's not just the plane itself. It's how it fits into China's overall military strategy.
Exactly. China's thinking in terms of a system of systems now. The J-36 won't be operating in isolation. It'll be part of a network coordinating with other aircraft, drones, ground-based systems.
Like a big, intricate web with the J-36 as a key node.
Right.
And speaking of webs, the J-36's sensor suite is pretty impressive. They've got side-looking airborne radar, electro-optical sensors, basically giving it a whole extra set of eyes.
Yeah. Instead of just looking ahead, that side-looking radar lets the J-36 scan a wide area to the sides, so it can spot targets trying to sneak up on it from the flanks. And then the electro-optical sensors, they give it real-time imaging and targeting data, even in conditions where radar might not be as effective.
So this thing's not just a fighter, it's a surveillance platform too.
That's what makes it so dangerous. It can gather intel, track enemy movements, engage targets, all while staying practically invisible to radar.
It's a real game changer. And the U.S. Department of Defense is already taking notice. They're calling China's Air Force the largest in the Indo-Pacific. And they've labeled China as their top pacing challenge.
That tells you just how seriously they're taking this development. The J-36 is a direct challenge to American military dominance in the Pacific.
And then you've got the situation along the India-China border,
Right.
already a pretty tense area. China's deployed its J-20 stealth fighters near the border, and India's relying on its Rafale jets to counter them. If the J-36 enters the mix, things could really escalate.
It's a potential flashpoint, for sure. The J-36 could embolden China and increase the risk of miscalculation.
So we've got a super advanced stealthy fighter jet, a rapidly modernizing Chinese military, and a tense geopolitical landscape. It's starting to feel like the J-36 is more than just a single aircraft. It's a symbol of something much bigger.
Yeah, you're right. It's a statement of intent. China is determined to reshape the global order and establish itself as a dominant force.
That's a pretty sobering thought.
Yeah.
And we're just scratching the surface here.
Yeah, there's a lot more to unpack about the J-36 and its implications.
Definitely a conversation we need to keep having. Let's keep diving into this, shall we?
Absolutely. This J-36, it's not just a one-off thing. It's part of a much bigger trend we're seeing in militaries all over the world.
Like a global shift in how they're thinking about warfare.
Exactly. It's not just about building a better jet anymore. It's about the whole ecosystem around it. The tactics, the training, how you integrate AI and autonomous systems.
You know, the article mentioned that the J-36's test flight, it happened on a pretty significant day. The anniversary of Mao Zedong's birth. That can't be a coincidence, right?
I highly doubt it. China's very deliberate in its messaging, choosing that specific date for the test flight. That sends a pretty clear signal about their ambitions and their desire to project power.
So it's not just about regional dominance in the Pacific, it's about global influence.
Absolutely. And that influence, it goes beyond just the military. A strong military gives China more leverage in economic negotiations, territorial disputes, international relations in general.
It's like this one fighter jet is a window into a much bigger story about how global power is shifting in the 21st century.
I get it too.
Yeah.
It's a story that's still unfolding. We're moving away from a world dominated by a single superpower and towards a more multipolar world where several nations have the capacity to really wield some influence.
It's kind of mind-blowing to think about how one piece of technology
Mm.
can have such far-reaching implications.
It really speaks to the fact that technology, it's often a driving force in shaping history. The J-36 is a powerful symbol of China's technological progress and its growing assertiveness on the global stage.
But with all this talk about tech and geopolitics, we can't forget about the human element. What about the pilots who will be flying these incredibly advanced machines?
That's a crucial point. Even with all the advanced automation and AI, you still need highly skilled pilots to operate these complex systems effectively. And China's been investing heavily in pilot training programs. They're focused on developing a new generation of aviators who can handle the demands of modern air warfare.
The article touched on the U.S. response to all of this, specifically their Next Generation Air Dominance Program, or NGAD. Sounds like they're trying to stay ahead of the curve.
NGAD is a massive undertaking. It's not just about building a new fighter jet, it's about developing a whole new approach to air warfare, one that incorporates artificial intelligence, autonomous systems, and advanced networking capabilities. The goal is to maintain a technological edge over competitors like China.
But even if the U.S. can develop these next-generation technologies, can they keep up with China's sheer scale of production?
That's a big challenge. China has demonstrated an ability to rapidly produce large quantities of advanced military equipment. The U.S. will need to find ways to not only innovate, but also to scale up its production capabilities if they want to remain competitive.
It's almost like a classic David and Goliath story. Except this time, David has some serious firepower of his own.
It highlights the fact that we're moving away from a unipolar world dominated by a single superpower toward a more multipolar world where several nations have the capacity to project significant military and economic power.
That's a pretty profound shift. But what does it mean for the average person? How will all of this impact our daily lives?
That's the question, isn't it? The reality is that these shifts in global power dynamics, they have a ripple effect on everything. International trade, economic stability, the potential for conflict, our overall sense of security are all influenced by these developments.
It's a lot to process. It feels like we're on the cusp of a major historical turning point.
We're living through a period of unprecedented technological change and geopolitical upheaval. It's both exhilarating and a bit unsettling.
So where do we go from here? What's the next chapter in this story?
But the J-36 is just the tip of the iceberg. As China continues to advance its military capabilities, we can expect to see even more groundbreaking technologies emerging in the coming years. The question is, how will the rest of the world respond? What choices will other nations make in the face of this shifting landscape?
It seems like there are a lot of different paths this could take, each with its own set of challenges and opportunities.
The future is uncertain, but one thing is clear. The J-36 has shifted the playing field. It's forced everyone to reevaluate their assumptions and strategies.
It's a lot to consider. It feels like we're at a pivotal moment in history, and the decisions made today will have ripple effects for decades to come. So we've spent this deep dive really getting into the nuts and bolts of China's J-36 stealth fighter. And it's pretty obvious this thing is way more than just a cool new piece of hardware.
Right. It really signals a much larger shift that's happening in the global balance of power. It's a testament to China's ambitions on the world stage.
Yeah. It's almost like watching a high-stakes game of chess, with countries making these strategic moves and counter-moves in response to China's rise.
The stakes are definitely high, and the decisions that world leaders make in the coming years, they're going to have huge consequences for all of us.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what are some of the key takeaways we should be keeping in mind?
I think the J-36 is a real wake-up call. It just blows away any doubts about China's technological capabilities and its commitment to becoming a top military power. The old rules about global power dynamics, they just don't apply anymore.
Yeah, and it's not just about military strength either. We've talked about how all this impacts economics, international relations, even the possibility of conflict.
Exactly. The J-36 is a symbol of China's growing confidence and its desire to actually reshape the global order. They're playing the long game here, and this fighter jet is just one piece of a much larger puzzle.
So what happens next? What should we be watching for as this whole thing continues to play out?
I think it's going to be fascinating to see how other nations respond to China's growing military might. Will they ramp up their own military spending? Will we see new alliances popping up? Or will the focus be more on diplomacy and dialogue to try to ease tensions?
It seems like there are a lot of different directions this could go, each with its own unique set of challenges and opportunities.
Yeah, the future's always uncertain. But one thing is for sure, that the J-36 has changed the game. It's forcing every player on the board to rethink their assumptions and strategies.
It's a lot to take in.
Yeah.
Feels like we're at a real turning point in history. And the choices we make today, they're going to echo for generations to come.
We've only just begun to scratch the surface of this topic. But hopefully this deep dive has given you some new insights and sparked some curiosity.
Yeah, definitely a conversation we need to keep having. As we learn more about the J36 and what it all means, it's important to stay informed, think critically, and really engage in some thoughtful discussions about the future we want to build. So thanks for joining us on this deep dive. And until next time, keep exploring.